Ready for another dose of performance-enhancing podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, my friend. Welcome back to another performance-enhancing podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. And today I'm going to share with you another one of my favorite Wayne Dyer stories. This is called the Teddy Stoddard story, although I've seen this online with different names, but the names don't really matter. I know it as the Teddy Stoddard story, just like I know the other one as the Chiat story. So I will read this one to you again. Hopefully I can somewhat keep it together this time. This is another one of these gorgeous, gorgeous stories. So I'll read it first, and then we'll talk a little bit about why I believe it's so beautiful. All right, so here goes, the Teddy Stoddard story. There's a story from many years ago of a primary school teacher. Her name was Mrs. Thompson. And as she stood in front of her fifth grade class on the very first day of school, she told the children a lie. Like most teachers, she looked at her students and said that she loved them all the same. But that was impossible because there in the front row, slumped in his seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Miss Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed that he didn't play well with the other children, that his clothes were messy, and that he constantly needed a bath. And Teddy could be unpleasant. It got to the point where Mrs. Thompson would actually take delight in marking his papers with a broad red pen, making bold X's, and then putting a big F at the top of his papers. At the school where Miss Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's past records, and she put off Teddy's until last. However, when she reviewed his file, she was in for a surprise. Teddy's first grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is a bright child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly and has good manners. He is a joy to be around." His second grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is an excellent student, well liked by his classmates, but he is troubled because his mother has a terminal illness and life at home must be a struggle." His third grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show much interest, and his home life will soon affect him if some steps aren't taken." Teddy's fourth grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is withdrawn and doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends and sometimes sleeps in class." By now, Ms. Thompson realized the problem, and she was ashamed of herself. She felt even worse when her students brought her Christmas presents, wrapped in beautiful paper and tied with pretty ribbons, except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in the heavy brown paper bag that he got from the grocery store. Ms. Thompson took pains to open it in the middle of the others' presents. Some of the children started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with some of the stones missing and a bottle that was 1/4 full of perfume. But she stifled the children's laughter when she explained how pretty the bracelet was, putting it on and dabbing some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy Stoddard stayed after school that day, just long enough to say, "Miss Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to." After the children left, she cried for at least an hour. On that very day, she quit teaching reading and writing and arithmetic. Instead, she began to teach children. Miss Thompson paid particular attention to Teddy. As she worked with him, his mind seemed to come alive. The more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. By the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest children in the class, and despite her lie that she would love all the children the same, Teddy became one of her teacher's pets. A year later, she found a note under her door from Teddy, telling her that she was still the best teacher he had ever had in his whole life. 6 years went by before she got another note from Teddy. He then wrote that he had finished high school, third in his class, and she was still the best teacher he ever had in his whole life. 4 years after that, she got another letter saying that while things had been tough at times, he'd stayed in school, had stuck with it, and would soon graduate from college with the highest of honors. He assured Miss Thompson that she was still the best and favorite teacher he ever had in his whole life. Then 4 more years passed and yet another letter came. This time he explained that after he got his bachelor's degree, he decided to go a little further. The letter explained that she was still the best and favorite teacher he had ever had, but now his name was a little longer. The letter was signed Theodore F. Stoddard, MD. The story doesn't end there. You see, there was yet another letter that spring. Teddy said he'd met a girl and was going to be married. He explained that his father had died a couple of years ago, and he was wondering if Miss Thompson might agree to sit in the place at the wedding that was usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Of course, Miss Thompson did. And guess what? She wore the bracelet, the one with the several rhinestones missing, and she made sure she was wearing the perfume that Teddy remembered his mother wearing on their last Christmas together. They hugged each other, and Dr. Stoddard whispered in Miss Thompson's ear, "Thank you, Miss Thompson, for believing in me. Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I can make a difference." Miss Thompson, with tears in her eyes, whispered back, she said, "Teddy, you have it all wrong. But you were the one who taught me that I can make a difference. I didn't know how to teach until I met you." Okay, so yeah, that gets me every time too. I love that story for so many reasons. I love that story because we don't know how we impact people. We don't know how one little act can change someone's life and their life path entirely. And I think most of the time it's because we don't believe that we can do that. If you listen to one of the previous podcasts, Troy Ellis had wrote me one of the most beautiful comments via email. And I don't think that up until that point, I had honestly known that that was the kind of impact that this was having in the world. And I think it's so important for us to look past how people look or how they act and just know that inside of every single human being is a God. And I truly mean that, is a God. You know, we spoke about it before. Love thy neighbor like you love yourself. Well, if you knew that every single person around you was another God walking, how would you treat them? Wayne Dyer once shared a story about St. Francis and how God had told St. Francis, who was so fearful of lepers, that he needed to go find a leper and kiss him on the lips. And after that, he would forever be cured of his fear of lepers. And so St. Francis went and did it. And what he realized was that the leper that he kissed was Jesus. Now, I'm not religious by any means, but I do believe that these stories all have incredible power and incredible meaning. Miss Thompson, although it took her, reading his previous history and understanding and being able to see life through Teddy's eyes for the first time, had a choice in that moment, just like we have a choice every moment. She could have gone and been right about how he was and who he was and how he was acting, and continued marking his papers with red pen and getting joy out of putting F's on his papers, and no one would have batted an eye, because to the outside world, it all would have made sense. But she had a choice in that moment to be something for Teddy that no one was willing to be up until then. And because of that one moment, Teddy Stoddard became the man who he was. And in the process, and that's just what I find so beautiful, in the process, that boy was the catalyst for Miss Thompson completely changing and transforming her life. We all come into each other's lives for very specific reasons. It's our job to figure out what those reasons might be. So I hope that the story, you're able to find maybe one person or one scenario or one circumstance where you could potentially be a Miss Thompson for someone. And just know that on the other side of that, they just might be your Teddy Stoddard. So with that, I wish you all an amazing, amazing day. And I can't wait to see you on the next Pep Talk. I love you all.